Hello and welcome to Future Squared. Stephen Hawking once said that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, so let's adapt. My name is Steve Goveski, and each week I'll bring you conversations with preeminent thought leaders from a variety of fields to help you think in a multidisciplinary way, keep goals in your professional and personal life, and better navigate what is fast becoming a brave, new world. Future Squared is brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation accelerator that works with organizations to unlock their people's latent potential to create more impact for humanity and lead more fulfilling lives. If you need help driving your organization's innovation strategy, visit collectivecampus.io. And without further ado,
come with me if you want to live.
Welcome back to Future Squared for a special midweek bonus episode with Kate McCready. Kate is a designer, coach, and podcaster whose mission is to activate the potential in people and organizations to consciously craft their work for better lives and a better world. She says that conscious work lives are not just about business. They are not just about a job or a role. They're about how we show up and evolve as individuals across our careers, how we align with who we are, with what we do, and how we live, whether we work for someone else or run our own business. Whether we operate solo or lead an organization of thousands, whether we are the CEO or the work experience kid. Working as an innovation catalyst with state government, yes, that was really her title, then jumping over to the corporate world to work in innovation at Deloitte, she eventually stumbled across the wonderful world of human-centered design and took the leap into becoming an experienced designer, where she could tap into her passion for the human side of business. I had fun talking conscious leadership with Kate. So without further ado, I bring you Kate McCready. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here on the couch at Collective Campus, and you have braved the torrential rain almost outside in Melbourne at the moment to make your way here.
Yeah, it's pretty hairy out there today.
It is very hairy out there today. I was in Sydney for the last couple of days, and it was nice and sunny, and I somehow thought it would be nice and sunny today, so I've got my t-shirt on, and it's actually not too cold outside, so that's fine. But anyways, we're not going to spend the hour also talking about the weather, fortunately. We like to go a little bit deeper than that on this podcast. But for our audience who may not be familiar with you or your work, what's the 2,000-foot sort of elevator pitch view of who you are?
So I am all about helping people create more conscious working lives, and that looks like all kinds of different things. It looks like coaching people around personal growth and career and meaningful work. It looks like running leadership programs with organisations, helping people connect to who they are so that they can lead from a place that's connected to that sense of self, so that they can be better leaders and lead in a way that aligns to the kind of people they want to be and the kind of lives they want to live. And it's soon going to be teaching meditation as well in the Vedic tradition. So
okay, cool. We can touch on the meditation stuff a little later. But, this sort of stuff, talking about meaning and conscious leadership and so on, isn't something people just kind of wake up with one day and say, I want to teach deliberate action and conscious leadership and this sort of stuff. And it's not something that pops up on the VCE sort of exam. It's something you can, it's not something that your VCE career counselor talks to you about. So how did you land on this path?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for a long time, parts of my upbringing have always given me a deep care for people. Like I look at my relationship with my grandma, and my grandma was a beautiful, caring woman who gave to lots of charities and had a real connection to the wider human condition. And I think that's kind of unusual sometimes for people of that generation too. Yeah. She was really progressive in that way.
What do you think that came from?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know so much about her parents and her relationship with her parents. It could have been to do with growing up during the war. Her husband, my grandfather, was from Austria and was a Jew in Austria and left Austria around the time of the war and had his father killed in a concentration camp. I don't know if that has had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Because it was not really talked about in my family either for a long time, even till past after he died. We didn't really even know much about it. So I'm not sure if perhaps that influenced her in some way, but who knows?
But it definitely influenced you and your empathic outlook.
Yeah, her influence definitely did. And then kind of following on, I think there were parts of me that continued that just general care for people throughout my my childhood and my teenage years. And then when I was studying entrepreneurship, funnily enough, talking to you at RMIT, one of my final courses was a social entrepreneurship course. And that was one of the subjects that I enjoyed the most out of everything. And I've always kind of had that social aspect. And I think that then that led me into things like conscious business and that kind of thing. And so I think that's had a big impact. Also, I've just always had this real awareness of the effect that work has on people. And again, stories from kind of my upbringing. My dad was, still is very, very bright guy, studied Russian politics and economics and killed it at uni and all that kind of stuff, and went and became a yacht rigger because he loved it. And my grandmother on the other side was one of the she was the second female physio in Australia because that's what she wanted to do. And I've had these role models of people that have done things that they've loved because they've wanted to do them, not followed a path because there were rules or there were things that they should do.
Yeah.
There were little, question mark. What are they called?
Quotation
marks. I was just doing with my
things they should do, quote unquote.
And so I've had this upbringing of a family that taught me to follow what I was passionate about and what I loved, and that would take me where I wanted to go, and it has. And I see so many people in the working world doing things because they should or because they're trying to achieve something that's not about fulfillment. It's about money or it's about something else.
Conforming with society's expectations of what success looks like.
Yeah. So just been super lucky that I've had a different upbringing, and it has, I think, really formed the basis for this path for me.
Awesome. So I think with a lot of people, their behavior is usually a byproduct of one, DNA, biology, evolution, if you will, but also their upbringing from early years through to childhood, teenage years, and even young adulthood. And oftentimes that means that people find themselves, say, institutionalized. They might be working for a big organization and they'll continue doing so because everybody else is. And unless they have that environment where they're surrounded by people or they see people who are questioning the status quo, they might just keep doing that because they have no reason to question it and they haven't got any role models to look up to. Yep. So in your case, I guess that was really quite key that you had your dad who, despite studying Russian politics and everything else, became a yacht rigger, and your grandma who was the second person, it was a grandmother, was the second person in Australia who second woman who practiced physio. So I think that's really key. And if you haven't got those people in your life, perhaps finding them, seeking them out, whether it's meetups, whether it's finding entrepreneurs online, whether it's reading books and listening to podcasts, because your mentor doesn't need to be a physical person who you see face to face over a coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So before you even decided you wanted to become an entrepreneur, I know you went on a bit of a sort of a soul seeking / finding yourself jaunt, if you will, to Japan, where you taught English.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So, what kind of stumbling blocks eventuated in you actually wanting to take entrepreneurship at RMIT?
Yeah, so the Japan thing was, so I actually initially studied theatre. That was my first thing out of uni, and got out of that and went, love theatre, don't want to do it for a living, and found myself working in a call centre. Yes,
I worked at a call centre for about 6 months back in 2008. So a lot of fun.
Soul destroying.
Yeah, that's another way of putting it.
Yeah. I met my husband there though. So
I put a lot of people on hold though. So I wasn't the best employee.
So I was working in that call center and happened to have a friend who had been and done the Teach in Japan thing. And my husband, now husband, and I were working there together, and this friend was like, you guys should go to Japan, you'd love it. And one day we were just like, yeah, why not? It was one of those whims, like we didn't enjoy what we were doing, so we felt we needed to, shake it up and do something different, and at that time in our lives.
Had you been overseas but at that point? Or?
I hadn't lived overseas. I'd been overseas.
Sure.
And yeah, packed up our bags and spent the first year that was the first year we actually lived together as well, in a tiny, tiny shoebox of an apartment in Japan. And yeah, that was just an amazing experience of kind of exploring the world, being amongst a different culture, meeting other people who were in a similar position of what the heck am I doing with my life? And you get a lot of people teaching English in Japan who are doing that because it's a great way to experience a new culture, and some travel and get paid. And
definitely,
yeah. But I really enjoyed teaching as well. It was great. And when I was over there, it was like, right, got to start thinking about the next move. And I was looking at a lot. I'd always had an interest in starting my own business because my dad is a small business owner, and I always loved the freedom that he had through his work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, starting my own business was something that was on the cards. And then I found the entrepreneurship degree and was like, wow, this is not just teaching me how to do business, but it's teaching me how to do that on a higher level, but also gives me a degree as well. So there was a number of boxes that ticked. And
fantastic. And do you feel like that course, because I know a lot of people have mixed things to say about entrepreneurship courses. Yeah. Is it really going to prepare you for entrepreneurship? Because nothing is like the real thing. It's like, and this isn't my view, but a lot of people will say it's kind of like watching a kickboxing how-to video on YouTube and then jumping into the ring. It's not going to prepare you. So, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Nothing is going to prepare you for the real thing. Yeah. Nothing ever prepares you for the real thing, no matter what kind of study you do in what area. You are far more prepared than someone that hasn't done it.
Yeah.
There's someone just asked me the other day, do you use any of it? And I said, yeah. Like, I mean, some of our subjects, which I didn't particularly love this one at the time, were like commercial law. Right. I use that quite often, just bits and pieces of it. You know, accounting. I'm listing all the boring ones here.
You are. You're really selling it for RMIT.
I know. Accounting, law. But also, I think it's more that you really get used to trying your hand at everything that you have to do in business, which is what the course does teach you to do, because you do everything from marketing to law to web design to, innovation and entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. So you start to use that muscle of being adaptable and learning quickly and doing lots of different things and developing that mindset that that's what's going to be expected of you. And I think that's what's really important for entrepreneurs is just expect that you're going to have to at some point put your hand to pretty much everything until you can afford to hire someone else to do it for you. And that has been invaluable to me in not just in my career as a business owner, but my career before that when I was working in corporate and working in government. And you look at the working world today, and that's what we need from people. We need people to be able to adapt and change quickly. I was just at something in Europe a couple of months ago, and a guy was talking about, from Deloitte Centre for the Edge, was talking about this need for, or the change that we're seeing from scalable efficiency to scalable learning as one of the big shifts, and being adaptable and being able to learn quickly. It's going to be what is going to keep you employed in the future.
And I was lucky enough to have Kevin Kelly on my podcast probably ages ago now, 2 years ago. It feels like just yesterday that I was so anxious as hell in the lead up to him appearing on that show. But he's, the founder of Wired Magazine, and he says that, going forward, everybody will be basically an eternal newbie because things are changing so much. And by virtue of that, the number one thing people need to learn is how to learn, how they best go about learning. And it's not just about reading the book and saying, okay, I read this book, I've learned it. Chances are you're going to forget 95% of it within a week of putting it down. It's about perhaps taking notes and then writing up a blog post or teaching someone else what you learned, collecting some of the key learnings on a podcast like this, and then that starts to solidify those learnings. But if you're not really intentional about, hey, how do I best learn? What's the process? What do I need to learn in the first place as well? What's going to serve me here? I mean, is it learning about, say, accounting or commercial law, or is it something else? And I think that's something that perhaps a lot of people don't take the time to really reflect and be deliberate about their choices. And that's not just business and learning choices, but everyday choices, like why am I doing what I'm about to do next? Not really questioning. I mean, is that something you see show up in your work, that people perhaps are a bit divorced from deliberate, conscious decision making?
Yes, absolutely. I see it particularly with a lot of coaching clients that come to me wanting a career change, wanting to do more meaningful work. And it's often that...
What's the catalyst for that? I mean, why do they want a career change?
Often because they're working in a job that they hate, or they're working in a job that they like but in an environment that they hate, where they're not getting to express their potential.
I see that so much. Like so many people I know who want to really create or drive change in the world will say join a not-for-profit, and then they'll realize that in many cases it's just like stepping into this super bureaucratic environment where you can't get anything done. Totally.
Actually, there's this really interesting research that's been done out of the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and a couple of researchers looked at what are the dimensions of meaningful work. And what they found is that there's these kind of 7 dimensions of meaningful work, and one of them is to be able to express our true potential or our full potential. So that's that idea of taking what's within us and, sharing it out. Another one is developing and becoming ourselves. Unity with others and service to others. They're kind of the 4 key ones, and those 4 sit across these kind of tensions of the self and others. So there has to be a balance between serving the self and serving others, and has to be a balance between being and doing. And I think what a lot of people often think about when they think of meaningful work is that they think of the service to others bit, but they're forgetting all those there's actually all these other elements to it, which if those aren't all there as well, then the work begins to lose its sense of meaning. And the one final one I didn't mention is there also needs to be this balance between reality and imagination. So something can't be too far crazy idea that it can't seem possible, but it has to be, visionary and
achievable as well,
exciting enough that it's going to inspire someone to move towards it. So
it's kind of, I mean, in Elon Musk's world, it's going to Mars. That's challenging, but achievable. Going to Pluto, perhaps that's a bridge too far. It's not really going to galvanize the team in the same way. Yeah,
whereas Betty in accounting at so-and-so organisation, going to the moon is not going to...
Yes.
Or going to another planet, Mars, is not going to seem achievable. So,
exactly, and it needs to align with your strengths. And like I'm a big believer in this whole notion of strength-based leadership.
Absolutely.
Because you could start a business and spend all your time focused on things that don't align with your strengths, or trying to correct many of your weaknesses. Like you might be building a web business and thinking, well, I need to learn how to code and I need to learn UI design and all this sort of stuff. It's like, well, do you really, or are your skills better applied on things like business development and strategy and other things, rather than trying to correct all your weaknesses? Because even if you spend that time and energy trying to correct those weaknesses, chances are you're still not going to be that great at it compared to someone who perhaps has been doing it for many, many years. So, at what point do you pull in that co-founder? I mean, I've got my views on this, but I mean, given, your work at RMIT and, as an innovation catalyst, quote unquote, at the state of Victoria in government, I mean, what are your views in terms of pulling in that co-founder? Because I know initially, you might need to wear a lot of hats, but that road gets very, very lonely very, very quickly. And again, it doesn't really align with the strengths-based leadership. So, I mean, what have you seen play out in this space when it comes to bringing someone else on board?
Yeah, look, I think... it depends what kind of business you want to run. For the last 6 years, I've been running a sole show, and that was pretty intentional for flexibility and freedom and all of those kinds of things.
Not having to be accountable to someone else.
And for a time that served me, and have recently just started a company because I feel the need to grow, but it's also knowing how much you want to grow. Like I know I don't want to have a massive, huge company. I want something that's still small and agile. So, but for me, definitely I know that bringing on someone in the next little while is something that's a focus, and knowing my weaknesses. Like I'm really good with strategy and vision and kind of curation and, what are we trying to create here? What I'm not great at is seeing kind of things through to the finish. And I need someone who's that kind of that get things done person. I can do it, but
Yeah.
it's not my strength.
Yeah.
I will find every excuse in the book to get out
Yeah.
of doing something. So, but I found in the meantime, collaboration has been a really good one for me in order to help me through that. So having a collaborator, which I work on a project with, gives me that sense of accountability and a reason to see something through to the end. So I think it's like knowing where you're at and finding an option that meets your need for the moment. But I think finding someone who does balance you out is really important. But at the same time, I think my opinion of co-founders is that you are essentially going into a business marriage with that person.
100%.
So you got to go into it with as much confidence in that person that they're going to be someone that you could potentially spend the rest of your business life with.
100%. And, if you have hesitations about going into a business marriage, in the first instance, like if you do want to grow and if you do just want to focus on your strengths, just get onto, Upwork or Freelancer, find some VAs who can help you with all those process-oriented, rudimentary day-to-day tasks. Anything that can be put into a step-by-step process, chances are it could, in the first instance, potentially be automated, which is preferable to outsourcing. But if it can't be automated, just get someone else to help you with that. Like, you should not be focused on what I like to call $5 or $10 an hour tasks as an entrepreneur, because your time is precious. It's the most precious commodity you have. So you should be focused on the things where you can create the most absolute value. But something you touched on there, Kate, which I wanted to double click on, was that you don't want your business to be huge. You don't want to grow a huge business. And I think that's really important to call out, because so many entrepreneurs who read, and I always call out these two publications, but TechCrunch and Mashable, will think that, I need to raise a big bag of money and I need to try and become a unicorn, right? But with that comes investors, comes accountability, comes a big team, comes people management, comes, if you're not conscious about how you go about your day-to-day, a lot of stress. And the thing about that is, again, coming back to that conscious thing, like, why do I want to grow a very, very big business worth, over $1 billion?
Yeah.
Where is that coming from? Is that trying to satisfy some underlying ego issues I have, some insecurities? Is that because everybody else is doing it? Is that really going to make me happy?
Happy, yeah.
So, like, being upfront about what kind of business do I want to build and why do I want to build this business and how is this business going to serve me, rather than just going into it because everybody else is going into it.
I really love the idea of like asking yourself, rather than like, what do you want to do? What do you want to, what's the business you want to create? I say, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be first as a person, and then go, okay, well, if I'm creating a business, what kind of business aligns to that vision of who I want to be and how I want to live my life? Because I think a lot of the time, I really distinctly remember reading The 4 Hour Workweek.
Yeah, as do I.
As does so many people.
Yes.
And the story that really stuck out at me was that story of the businessman and the fisherman, where he talks about, the Harvard MBA guy goes to the fisherman and they go through this whole story. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but the punchline is essentially about the fact that, the businessman is trying to achieve what the fisherman already has, which is being able to sit on the beach and fish and like go and have a drink and with his friends and, make love to his wife. I don't think it's make love to his wife, but I just put that one in for fun.
Yes.
And for me, it's like, well, why am I building a business? I'm building a business so that I can do something meaningful and good in the world, so that I can have a life where I have a sense of freedom and fulfillment, where I can maintain really strong relationships with the people that I care about, to live my values and to be able to travel a bit. But I don't need a lot as well. Like, I've learnt that the things that bring me happiness are not money. So to build a huge business to make a shit ton of money, it's not actually the thing that's going to serve the things that are most important to me. And I don't think people start there a lot of the time. And it's interesting you talk about the thing between the idea of building this huge business, and often entrepreneurs, they get out of corporate to go build a business, but they end up creating a life for themselves that is just as restrictive as the corporate environment they came from, perhaps more restrictive, because they've got way more responsibility. So, and I'm not saying responsibility is a bad thing, it can be a good thing too, but it's got to be an intentional decision that actually I've got to know that that's what it's going to be like. And this is another thing I talk to a lot of my clients about when they're looking to make a big change in their career, whether it's to have a different job or it's to start a business. I'm like, do you actually know what the how is like? Because we get all why is so big right now, start with why.
Yes,
and it's so
Sinek.
important. It's really important. Yep. But if you forget the how, you can end up doing a why that you love, but you hate the how so much that the why, like, it doesn't actually matter. If you don't love sales and you end up being essentially the person who needs to go out and sell your business, then, it doesn't matter if you love it. It can grate at you. You can do it for a time, but I think after a while it'll start to grate you down.
100%.
Yeah.
And, if you're stepping out of, say, the corporate world after 10 years, chances are you're on a pretty penny. You've got your weekly salary coming in. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You've got your 4 weeks leave a year. You can go to bed at night most of the time, not really worrying about work. Whereas with entrepreneurship, it's not quite the same, particularly during the first year, 2, 3, while you're really trying to get your feet under the table and start building a cash flow positive business. And I think so many people make that leap because they are disgruntled at work. They do hate their job. They don't like their boss. Oftentimes it could be just the fact that they perhaps don't have a creative outlet on the side. Rewinding back to my days at Ernst & Young, I had opened a heavy metal nightclub called Madhouse, and she is laughing, ladies and gentlemen. I understand, but look, I'm still a lifelong heavy metal fan, and every Friday night for about a year we ran this club. Some nights heaps of people would turn up, other nights not so many, but having that outlet on the side to work on the marketing, the branding, the creative material, to have bands perform after their gigs, like an after party at the club, and have all the punters from those shows come along. Like, that was something that I found, because I had that on the side and work didn't become the be-all, end-all anymore, wasn't the be-all, end-all anymore as a byproduct of that. I found myself more focused at work because I had that. But if you don't have anything on the side, if you don't have any hobbies or creative pursuits or outlets, you may just conflate entrepreneurship with the way out, the way to give your life meaning. But there are so many different things you can do to give your life meaning. You could engage in some sort of philanthropic activities. You could volunteer on weekends. You could do all sorts of stuff that's going to give your life meaning that doesn't involve quitting your job and putting yourself in a precarious financial position.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say on the other side of that too, I think often entrepreneurs, business people, we get into the same trap where we put so much into our business that we forget about having those hobbies and those other interests on the side, and the business becomes the hobby. And I think that's can be just as
I think that's
imbalanced.
Really dangerous. And I see a lot of people using or hiding behind the veil of work as a way to basically avoid confronting themselves in the real world sometimes, like working long hours and saying, well, this is expected. This is what society says you're supposed to do if you want to make it. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk. He's talking about hustle, 12 to 14-hour days. This makes me feel good. But then neglecting your relationships, not really working on other aspects of yourself. Like, one of the first books I ever read, well, not the first book I ever read would have been something like, I don't know, Dr. Seuss. One of the first books.
Good books, though.
Great books. Was it The Cat in the Hat? Yes, and Green Eggs and Ham.
Yeah,
yes,
I do not like them, Sam. I am. Yeah.
Anyways. One of the first books I read, I guess, when I started to go on this journey of questioning what is and why, was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, Stephen Covey was very big on living a principle-centered life. So entrepreneurship, family, friendship, fitness. In his case, I think he had church in there. I'm not the most religious person in the world, but church, community groups, all that sort of stuff. And so many entrepreneurs fall into the bucket of just focusing on the business, like you said, and it can be incredibly detrimental, not only to the rest of their life, but also to their business, because eventually it wears you down and it's not sustainable. It's like just eating kale and broccoli every single day for the rest of your life. Eventually you're going to snap.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stress that we're dealing with in society these days is huge, and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. And the only way to really break down stress is to rest. And, if people aren't building resting practices into their working life, something's got to give. Whether it's, taking proper holidays or taking proper weekends or, building a meditation practice or whatever it might be. Stress is one of the biggest killers these days. And you see so many people in that entrepreneurial world burn out to the point where they can't go on anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, over the last 500 years, you look at homicide rates have come down from like 1 in 1,000 people to something like 1 in 100,000 in Western economies. But now the people are effectively dying because of stress and not getting enough sleep and things of that nature, which is a reflection of our work lives today. And just on that point, I published an article in Harvard Business Review yesterday called The Case for the 6-Hour Workday, which I'll link up in the show notes, which I think if you are struggling with that workload and stressed out, maybe have a read of that article because it does cover off on a lot of tips, techniques, tactics that can help you bring down your work hours and reconnect with the other more important aspects of your life, in my opinion. But on that stress and taking care of yourself and resting, I know you're big on meditation, yoga. Tell me about meditation. I mean, how did you discover that? What kind of meditation?
So, I mean, I'd been dabbling in meditation for years, like probably since I was in my teens, and had never really found a practice that had stuck. And a while ago, or a number of years back, I was looking to find a teacher because I was like, right, nothing's really stuck. I've tried all the apps, nothing's sticking. I think I need to take this to the next level and actually find someone who is an expert in this, essentially. And it just so happened that as I was starting my search, this thing popped up on Instagram for an introductory talk to this Vedic meditation
Vedic?
thing.
So
Vedic, Vedic, kind of like Lord Vader.
Okay, awesome.
For those who want to remember it. And I went along to this intro talk and was really impressed by what I saw and heard about this technique, which I'd never heard of. I mean, we hear so much about mindfulness, and this is quite a different technique. It's a mantra based technique. It comes originally from an Indian kind of heritage, but doesn't have to be religious or anything. And it's practiced 20 minutes twice a day. And unlike mindfulness, which is a concentration-based technique, Vedic meditation is a transcending technique. So the idea is you transcend into a fourth state of consciousness, which is different to your waking, sleeping or dreaming state, which puts you into a deep state of rest and helps you release stress from your body. Yep. So very much about kind of the mind-body connection and releasing the stresses that we build up over time but have no way to release, or we have ways to release, but this is a way to, do that release 20 minutes twice a day. Yeah. And it's a really amazing technique, and it's very simple. For all the people that say, "Oh, I can't meditate because I have too many thoughts," it's a great antidote to that because thoughts are a part of the meditation and they're accepted in the meditation as part of it. So
and oftentimes when people say something like that, they're probably the people that need to meditate more than others if they're constantly like.
Yeah, I mean, but thoughts are a natural part of us, and I think it's when we feel like it's that idea of I must get rid of my thoughts rather than.
No, it's about watching your thoughts and like recognizing them rather than thinking that they're just noise.
Yeah, but where a transcending technique is different is you do get to a point where you kind of at some point you do transcend the thoughts, and then a thought will come again, and you will gently come back to your mantra. So it's kind of it's just a little bit more fluid, and the science shows that compared to a concentration based technique, it actually. Different parts of your brain don't kind of light on. So with the concentration-based techniques, it uses focused attention, whereas this technique doesn't. So if you think about it, if you're trying to quieten, if you're trying to calm down, the fact that you have to concentrate on something is almost counterproductive. So this technique is different.
Okay, fantastic.
But I think all techniques are great. Like I think do what works for you. I think that's the most important thing with meditation. Do the one that you're actually going to stick to because, again, the research shows that you get the really great benefits out of meditation when you hit something like 1,000 hours. So unless you're going to stick to it, you're not going to get your 1,000 hours.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've been meditating on and off and just mindfulness meditation for about 3 years. And for me, that combined with just being mindful throughout the day, I think it's like a muscle. Like the more you work it out, the stronger it gets. And if you're just mindful around how you respond to external stimuli throughout the day and not being in that state of constant reaction, but just saying, okay, I'm triggered here or something to that effect, just noticing why, taking a breath and then choosing your response based on what's actually going to serve you, what's the person you want to be. And like you said, start with who you want to be. The more you do that, the more it becomes your second nature, to not just snap at any given moment. Like I can't remember the last time I kind of snapped, maybe 3-4 years ago, but I think if you become really conscious about that, very deliberate about it, over a number of days, it just becomes second nature. And it's like I went through this thing, and I think this was inspired, we mentioned the 4-hour work week earlier. I think it was inspired by Timothy Ferriss, where it was 21 days of no judging, as in not defaulting to judging anyone, anywhere, doesn't matter what they were doing. And by virtue of just doing this day after day after day after day after day, at the end of the 21 days, you just found yourself just not judging, because you realize that, hey, they might have challenges in one aspect of their life, but they're probably better than you in multiple other aspects. And just because, where is this judgment coming from as well? Like, is this a way for me to make myself feel better about myself? Because there's definitely a lot of aspects of my life that could be a lot better. And so whether it's judgment, whether it's being mindful, whatever it is, just give yourself, whether it's meditation, give yourself that time to really, let the benefits kick in. Like you said, 1,000 hours. In some cases, there's research that says, to build a habit, 21 days of conscious effort, whatever it is. I'm sure it varies based on what you're doing, but don't give up after, say, one session or after a week because, I tried meditation once and it just didn't work for me, which you hear so much.
I should say too, don't, because I said 1,000 hours, don't not learn to meditate because you get the first level of benefit straight away, but it's the 1,000 hours where you become essentially what they call an experienced meditator, and that's when the really crazy benefits start to kick in, basically. But you'll get the first level of benefits straight away.
Yeah. Once you get to that level, it's like reconnecting with childhood experiences and things that you had suppressed and all sorts of stuff that changes your worldview and gives you a more enlightened state. I mean, talk to me about that. I could be way off the mark, but
I don't know so much about childhood experiences, but I'm not fully across this research and the depth of it, but I think it's where you really do start to get more of that, I suppose, towards that enlightened state, where, everything seems more blissful and I'd have to look
fluid.
at
You're like a river just flowing, not worrying, not saying, I need to stop here and just chill out for a bit. You're just a river, just coming into sight, flowing out of sight. Totally get it. So just on that, so one last question. Good work in 20 words or less, what does that mean to you? It doesn't need to be 20 words, it could be 30.
Work that's good for you, good for others, good for the world.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. Well, people can find out more about you at katemccready.com, but I understand you're going through a bit of a brand refresh at the moment. What's the plan going forward? Where can people find out about the new stuff you're working on?
Yeah, so the new company is called Leading Beings, leadingbeings.com. And that will be, it's softly launching on social media at the moment, but we'll be in full flight probably end of Jan, start of Feb. So
fantastic.
You can come and learn meditation or get coaching or have some kind of personal development learning experience. And we're looking forward to sharing not just my work but work of other people too who are doing great stuff in this space.
And you've got a podcast of your own?
I do. That's currently called The Good Work Revolution, and will also be becoming Leading Beings as we move forward.
Awesome. Well, we'll link both of those up in the show notes for our listeners. Thank you so much, Kate, for your time. You've been an awesome guest.
Thanks for having me.
Parting words of wisdom to put you on the spot?
Meditate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi guys, Steve again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to receive a weekly email from me, complete with reflections, books I've been reading, words of wisdom, and access to blogs, ebooks, and more that I'm publishing on a regular basis, just leave your details at futuresquared.xyz/subscribe and you'll receive the very next one. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, take a minute to like, share, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It goes a long way to giving the podcast the exposure it needs so I can continue bringing you guests and conversations of the highest caliber. You can catch me on Twitter at Steve Glibeski and on Instagram at TheSteveGlibeski. Until next time.
Hasta la vista, baby.